Act 19 to come up here to help us salute the flag.
Come on up, you guys. Come here. Come on up. Over by the flag. Over by the flag. Over by the flag. You guys ready to do this? Go ahead, start us off. Start us off. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can I show them that they're on TV? Yeah, please show them on TV. Yeah. There you are. See you there. Be careful with the bottom. This is the way. You're on television. It's a good delay. There you are. There you go. Okay. All right, let's go down this way. Here we go, guys. Thank you. Thank you guys for staying. Appreciate that, sir. Sorry for running late. See you, Tim. Thank you. Thanks, guys. Yes. Yes, they're learning early. Yeah, TikTok and YouTube. All right. Yeah. All right. Thank you. Pursuant to Section 5, Chapter 231, Public Laws of 1975, this is the state for the record, the adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the public by posting and maintaining the annual notice of regular meetings on the bulletin board of the municipal building, by mailing the annual notice of regular meetings for 2020 to the News Record and Star Ledger in December 2019, and by filing said notice in the office of the Township Clerk.
Mr. Adams? Mr. Daffis?
Here.
Mr. DeLuca?
Here.
Mr. Lembrick?
Here.
Mayor McGee?
Here.
Whereas Chapter 231 Public Laws 1975, commonly known as the Open Public Meetings Act, requires all meetings of public bodies to be open to the public. Whereas Section 7A provides that the governing body has the discretion to permit, prohibit, or regulate the active participation of the public at any meeting, and whereas desired the governing body to comply with the provision of this act, same time to conduct its business in an orderly and expeditious manner, now therefore be it resolved by the Township Committee, Township of Maplewood, that it does hereby prohibit, except as set forth in the formal agenda, active participation in the deliberations of the governing body by the public, except as otherwise prescribed by law, does limit the public to the observation of the action and discussion of the governing body at all of its regular and special meetings.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Adams? Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mayor McGee?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Fritzen. So I will run through, our apologies for being late this evening. We had some personnel issues to deal with and close. So I'll run through our agenda and then we'll get going. We have the public comment first and foremost, and then we have a total of 3 ordinances on final passage. One ordinance regarding zoning and development regulations. This is regarding changing the definition of our zoning officer. Our second ordinance on final passage is related to a bond ordinance for improvements to our pool utility. Our third and final ordinance on final passage is related to the appropriation of funding in regards to work on the woodland. We have 2 new ordinances. One ordinance is on vehicles and traffic. This is about parking issues on Curtis Place. Our second new ordinance on introduction is regarding parking limitations, certain sections of Summer Avenue. We have a total of 5 discussion items this evening. We'll talk about potential advertising, revenue opportunities leveraging our jitney buses, a declaration to support the salt cap lawsuit. We'll talk about the potential of creating a committee on African American people of color. We'll also review and approve the notice for sale of a liquor license. And we'll finally finish with a discussion about the New Jersey Library bond grant. We have 2 resolutions that we'll discuss this evening as well. Authorization, change order number 9. This is related to Maplewood Avenue pavers. And then also a resolution closing the Maple Avenue paver contract with Diamond Construction. Our consent agenda, we have several items on our consent agenda, including the authorization of a payment to a code enforcement official, setting the new order for our township committee meetings for 2020, the appointing of our labor council, appointing representation to Essex County Community Development for the year 2020, authorization to accept bids for capital improvement projects during 2020, authorization payment to Department of Public Works Rupert Calvin Bell, authorization 2019 budget transfer between appropriate reserve, and extending the contract of Professional Account Management LLC for the municipal court, the approval of application for funding for Essex County Open Space Local Aid Program, authorization for change order number 8, and then finally the closing of fiscal year 2008 capital roadway improvement contract. Oh, and bills and claims as well. We'll have our second public comment on any subject matter. We'll hear from our departments. If you have any reports at that point, our administrative reports from Ms. Viveros, Mr. Desiderio, and Ms. Fritzen, elected reports for elected officials, and then we will adjourn until February 4th. Quite a robust agenda. So we will now open up the floor for public comments on agenda items only. So if anyone would like to approach the Township Committee for comment on any agenda items, please do so. Or come early if you like. You will stay. Sure. Okay, we'll move on then. Seeing no one, we'll close public comment. We will now go to agenda item number 6. We have ordinance on final passage.
Mr. Mayor, item number 6, ordinance on final passage. Ordinance number 2980-20. It's an ordinance to amend Chapter 271 of the Code of the Township of Maplewood entitled Zoning and Development Regulations. This ordinance will change the definition of the zoning officer within the Township of Maplewood.
This ordinance has been published, copies posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, and copies made available to the general public in accordance to the law. Would anyone like to speak on this ordinance? Seeing no one, I'll close this public hearing. We'll now get a motion from Mr. DeLuca.
Before you do that, please, this matter was sent to the planning board pursuant to statute. I have a memo from the board secretary. The planning board passed a resolution with the finding that the ordinance 2980-20, which changes the zoning officer designation, is consistent with the master plan.
Thank you, Mr. Desiderio.
Mayor, I move this ordinance be adopted as a whole and the clerk be directed to publish the same as a passed ordinance in the Maplewood South Orange News Record according to law.
I second the motion.
Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mr. Adams? Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca?
Yes.
Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Mayor McGehee?
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Whitson. We have another ordinance on final passage.
Also on final passage, ordinance number 2981-20, bond ordinance providing for improvements to the pool utility and by the Township of Maplewood in the County of Essex, New Jersey, appropriating $1,600,000 therefore, and authorizing the issuance of $1,600,000 of bonds or notes of the Township to finance the cost thereof.
This ordinance has been published, copies posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, and copies made available to the general public in accordance with the law. Would anyone like to speak on this ordinance? Seeing no one, we will close the public hearing. May I get a motion?
I move this ordinance, Mayor, be adopted as a whole and the clerk be directed to publish the same as a passed ordinance in the Maplewood South Orange News Record according to law.
I'll second it. Any discussion? Please call.
Let me just report that this ordinance and the next ordinance come from the engineering department, and the engineering department continues to work with residents to improve on traffic safety.
No, this is the bond ordinance.
This is the bond.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Apologies.
No worries.
Oh, good.
You're jumping
How
ahead.
long?
What happens when you ask me to tell Mr. Christian something?
So, any discussion again? Okay, seeing none, please call the roll.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca?
Yes.
Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Mayor McGehee?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Whitson. Another ordinance on final passage.
Yes, Mayor, item 8, ordinance number 2982-20, refunding bond ordinance of the Township of Maplewood in the County of Essex, New Jersey, providing for the funding of an emergency appropriation to pay for Phase 2 of the Woodland Building renovation project, appropriating $360,000 therefore, and authorizing the issuance of $360,000 refunding bonds or notes of the township for financing the cost thereof.
This ordinance has been published, copies posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, and copies made available to the general public in accordance with the law. Would anyone like to speak on this ordinance? Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing. May I get a motion? Mr. DeLuca.
Mr. Mayor, I move this ordinance be adopted as a whole and the clerk be directed to publish the same as a passed ordinance in the Maplewood South Orange News Record according to law.
I'll second it. Any discussion? All right, Ms. Fritzen, please call the roll.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mayor McGee?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Fritzen. We have introduction of a new ordinance.
Yes, Mayor, item number 9, introduction of new ordinance, ordinance number 2983-20, is an ordinance to amend Chapter 257 of the Code of the Township of Maplewood entitled Vehicles and Traffic. This ordinance will implement parking restrictions on certain sections of Curtis Place.
Mayor, I move the passage of this ordinance on first reading, its publication according to law in the Maplewood South Orange News Record, and a hearing to be held on February 4th.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mayor McGee?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Fritzen. We have another ordinance, introduction.
Yes, item number 10, Mayor, introduction of new ordinance, ordinance number 2984-20, is an ordinance to amend Chapter 257 of the Code of the Township of Maplewood entitled Vehicles and Traffic. This ordinance will implement time limit parking on certain sections of Summer Avenue.
Mr. Mayor, I move the passage of this ordinance on first reading, its publication according to law in the Maplewood South Orange News Record, and the hearing to be held on Tuesday, February 4th, 2020.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mayor McGee?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Fritzen. We are now on to agenda item number 11. We have 5 discussion items, and I'm starting off with the first one, and I will start off with this. This is a discussion regarding advertising revenue using jitney buses. So at our last standing communications meeting, we discussed ways to find incremental revenue streams for the town. We recognize that there are some best demonstrated practices leveraged by New Jersey Transit, by New York City subways, and the idea is to explore looking at ways where we can leverage our jitneys and have advertising on our jitneys so that we can have another form of revenue. Now, understand that there are 2 ways we can go about this. We can manage it in-house, which has been done by Livingston, or we could actually leverage a third party who would be managing the process for potential rev share. I know that our Assistant Township Administrator has been doing some due diligence on this. The key for us, obviously, is to make sure we control the type of advertising that we'd have on our jitney, so we wouldn't have alcohol or tobacco or anything along those lines. But I just wanted to get the pulse of my fellow colleagues to see if they're interested in this. Again, this is, they're driving billboards, they're in town, they're hitting key touch points. I think just based on the demographics of our town, that would be a lucrative idea for a potential advertiser, and so I leave it up to just a brief discussion.
So would the proposal be to have advertising on the outside of the buses, the inside, both?
So initially, I was thinking the outside of the buses. So like you see, like on the transit, you see like, some of the, I won't mention the companies, but you see their advertising as it comes into the station.
Right.
Yep.
I mean, I was also thinking about, when I ride the subway and I see sort of the, there's no ads on the outside, but when you get inside, they're sort of up above. Although I realize that, the number of people seeing the jitney from the outside is probably more than the number of people who see it from the inside. But I was just wondering if we were thinking about, I guess maybe, whatever we can sell, so to speak, is on the table. But, I see no harm in exploring this.
Thank you.
Yeah, I see no harm either.
Okay. I think it's a great idea. We tried it once. It was actually voted down by the Township Committee, believe it or not. Really? The first time, yeah. But I think we should do it. I think we should look at inside and outside.
Yep.
One thing to guide us as you look at this, we do have Chapter 123.9, .9, it's township website fees, lottery to select advertisers. We also passed an ordinance to allow advertising on the website, and I believe we set up some, establish a non-discriminatory lottery system for selection of advertisers. I know we went through some of this issue as to who could advertise, what entities would be allowed and not, so we might want to just resurrect some of that to see what we've learned and what we've decided already.
Should we review those ordinances in the next code agenda, or you want to bring it back to the TC first?
I would be okay with you reviewing them, and then down the parallel, the communications committee can continue to explore, internal and external advertising of the jitneys. So, great. Thank you. Okay, discussion item number 2, declaration in support of the salt cap lawsuit. Mr. Daffis.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a discussion regarding a declaration in support of the salt cap lawsuit and in support of possibly setting up a charitable tax credit program for Maplewood taxpayers. We've discussed this a little bit. It's been a while since we have, so I'm going to give a little background. In 2017, as everyone out there is aware, the Treasury Department under the Trump administration imposed a $10,000 cap on the federal deduction for payments of state and local taxes, otherwise known as SALT. The SALT deduction without cap has been an American tradition in our country for a very long time, and it's quite possible that such new rule was politically motivated to harm places like New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, metropolitan, heavy Democratic-leaning communities that are already overburdened by high taxes, most notably property taxes. Governor Murphy came out strong against the rule and began encouraging municipalities to look into charitable tax credit programs as a workaround. Such charitable tax credit funds are lawful, they are legal. They're legal in 33 states, in fact, and have been used in the South in particular. And the way the program would work is that Maplewood taxpayers would make a charitable contribution to a municipal fund and receive a property tax credit worth 90% of the donation, so it's not a 100% match. So we and other municipalities began discussing the possibility of creating such a charitable tax credit program for Maplewood as a way to provide a remedy to our overburdened residents with high property taxes. But at the time that we were discussing this in 2018, the rules and regulations of what such a fund would look like, how it would operate, and how you set one up had not been published yet. Since then, we have received those rules and regulations. So I had our CFO run a few numbers to give a little context as to the burden that we're talking about here. And these numbers have been confirmed by our CFO. In 2018, the average residential property tax bill for Maplewood taxpayers was in the neighborhood of $16,000, $64.05. In 2018, and this really shocked me, I expected something in the neighborhood of 60 to 70%, but not 80%. In 2018, an estimated 80% of Maplewood taxpayers paid more than $10,000 in combined state and local taxes, including property taxes. Yes, in 2018, Maplewood taxpayers paid on average a total of $16,000 in property taxes. So that means that under this rule, the federal tax haul, Maplewood taxpayers may only deduct the first $10,000, the remaining $6,000, they must pay the applicable federal tax rate. So that is the additional burden on top of their existing burden that this new rule imposed. So the charitable tax program, like I said, would entitle donors to a property tax credit worth 90% of a contribution, sort of to ease the burden, that $6,000 burden. So as soon as the IRS became aware of discussions such as ours in our community and other communities around New Jersey and in New York, they, of course, issued new guidelines discouraging such funds, such programs. And in fact, they went further earlier last year and put in new rules into place that would make these charitable tax credits essentially not really worth it at all. So the declaration supports the lawsuit. New Jersey, New York, and Connecticut joined together in an effort mid-last year to sue the IRS, the Treasury, for this rule, and the declaration supports the lawsuit, and the declaration supports the idea of our continuing our efforts in looking to create such a charitable fund if we were successful, if the lawsuit was successful. So in the future, if the lawsuit moves forward and the lawsuit is successful, we affirm that we would continue looking into this lawful remedy as a way to ease the burden on our residents. And I will further add, I've circulated the declaration. If you have any questions, let me know. I hope you had the opportunity to review it. Whoever is listed on the declaration as the declarant, it can only be one of us from the Township Committee representing all of us, agrees also to submit to a deposition should the lawsuit move forward into the trial and discovery phase. So that is something to keep in mind. Currently, I'm listed as a declarant, as you all saw, because I've been working on this and championing this, and I've drafted the declaration along with the Attorney General's office. So, questions?
Thank you, Mr.
Concerns?
Davis.
I mean, I would support this. I mean, I think that, just from a practical standpoint, I sort of understand why this has become necessary. I mean, I think that the whole thing is sort of the ridiculous following the absurd, because, I mean, I think on the one hand, this is not what charitable contributions were set up for, but on the other hand, taking away saying that states and communities shouldn't spend state and local tax money essentially to have services and education and other things, and should either not have those things for the residents or should put the burden to provide them on the federal government is counterproductive. And you look at the states that have high state and local taxes, those don't just tend to be Democratic states, they also tend to be states with better public education, with better public roads, with better public services. I will not editorialize as to whether that also makes them more likely to be Democratic, but the facts can speak for themselves. I think this is tit for tat. I think that, if for the act of political retribution and leverage, some folks in D.C. want to come after states like ours, I think states like ours need to fight back, because it's our states that are also, to a disproportionate extent, funding the federal government. The latest numbers confirm that New Jersey receives the least back of the 50 states in terms of what we pay into the federal government and what comes back. So to then be told that because we have a state and local tax deduction, that may be above the national average that now is cut off, that we were otherwise taking from the federal budget, I think was preposterous. So therefore, I wish we weren't in this position. I think it's absurd that we're here, but I think that the lawsuit and I think the charitable proposal is a suitable reaction to what I think was a completely preposterous action down in D.C. So I'm for it. And I appreciate the work you've done on it, Mr. Daffis. I think if you want to be the declarant, certainly more power to you.
Whoever wants to be the declarant can be the declarant.
No, I'm not volunteering, and if it's a contest to see who can put their finger on their nose fast enough. If no one else wanted to do it, I feel strongly I'd be willing to do it, but I think you've done the work. I think you make an excellent witness in this case, and I plan to support this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lindbergh. Mr. DeLuca? Beautiful. And I also agree as well. I was at the AG Governor's Press Conference in South Orange this past summer when they announced that they were going to do this lawsuit. When you read this declaration, it's telling. Approximately 38% of our taxes we're unable now, on average, to account for. So, Mr. Daffis, thank you for your work on this. I'm in favor of it, and you also can be.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, number three, discussion item. Number three, rather, this is the discussion of potential committee on African American people of color concerns. Mr. Daffis.
Thank you, Mayor. So I wanted to create an opportunity. We're always looking for opportunities to engage our citizens in a community that is already very civically engaged. I wanted to, in particular, focus on bringing us together at a time when we are, as a nation, very divided. Hate is on the rise. Bias crimes are on the rise. A lot of people out there have serious concerns about where we're going as a nation, as a united nation, the United States of America. In particular, there has been racial bias is unearthing its ugly head again in this environment that we are in for various reasons, including in our community. And while we are very proactive and progressive as leaders up here and other champions out there on the street in being very diverse and inclusive in our boards and committees, and certainly make a big effort toward including African Americans and people of color in our boards and committees, and they are successful in advocating on their behalf in various capacities. I thought it would be very fitting in this time and really send the right statement out there that we create a centralized committee where concerns such as racial bias and other concerns of equity for African Americans and people of color in our community, and we do have a lot of people of color in our community, can have to go to advocate, to advise. Recently we saw through a rec committee meeting that some of our children of color came to speak about their experience as skateboarders in town. In another capacity, we've had families of color talk to us about their experience at the Maplewood pool. And again, this is not to create the notion or to color our town as a town that is not inclusive or tolerant. I'm not saying that, but I do think it would truly live up to our promise of being inclusive if we were to create a committee where volunteers from the community can come together and advise us on all matters, in this capacity. And if it turns out that the committee is not necessary, so be it. That would be a great thing. But I do think it would send the right statement. It would be bold, it would be visible, and it would truly be inclusive. In other communities, other municipalities have committees, such as this one. They call them committees on civil rights, and they include a broader umbrella. for now, I think I'd like to focus on this, especially as we're about to embark on Black History Month, celebrating Black history during the month of February. What are your thoughts?
So I'd like to see exactly what the mission is of the committee.
Sure.
And the other question is, there's a new group that's set up, South Orange Maplewood Against Hate Collective. We have the Community Coalition on Race. I'd like to make sure that we have our discussion in parallel with their work so that they don't feel somehow we're not validating what they're doing and we're setting up something that's going to compete.
Certainly, I agree with that, and I apologize for not drafting a proposed charter for your review beforehand. I didn't get to that, but I can bring that at the next meeting if you're willing. I move forward, if you support my moving forward in this regard.
Sure. Mr. Lundberg?
Yeah, I guess, on the one hand, I don't disagree with a lot of the motivation. I guess, and maybe it's just the wrong way to look at it, but I guess I'm hesitant to set a precedent that we're going to set up a Black committee and a Hispanic committee, and I wonder I just wonder if that might be sort of the ghettoization of certain communities to, this is the community that's going to speak for the Black people now, and this is the community that's going to speak for people of, of this race or religion in town. And, and it may be that I can get over that, but there's something about it that, at least for the moment, isn't sitting right with me.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah. So I think putting the charter together makes a lot of sense. I know that we hear about incidents for African Americans and people of color almost kind of after the fact. And there's no question there's going to be a Venn diagram here from the standpoint of we have the Community Board on Police, we do have the CCR, we do have the new group that we talked about. So I think we have to have a pretty defined mission for this organization to consider. I also think, Mr. Limber, you have a good point about a committee representing all Black people, because as we've learned in our community, there's an organization that uses the name Black, and then they talk about some type of workshop, and people, the general population of our community, thinks that they speak for people, Black people, people of color, and that's not the case. And a lot of Black people get really irritated when people say, well, that particular organization said this, so therefore we think all people who are that. So we need to be very sensitive and thoughtful about how we would put this together.
Sure.
But I do think if the key is to be proactive and not reactive in terms of issues of socialization and other factors, that we can continue the discussion.
And the only other thing I would say is it would feel a little bit better if somehow this was an organic. It's sort of weird for the government to come down and set this up without sort of a groundswell of interest.
Sure.
And maybe that's it, is to sort of put it out there and see.
Yeah, that's what I was hoping for.
Yeah, maybe if we put a mission out there, just start to get some reactions, see what people think.
Right, and I'll report back maybe a couple TCs down the road.
Sounds good. And then also with Black History Month coming up, and I know that Mr. Lugo is going to cover that, and we have such a robust program, there might be some opportunity to have some dialogue. And take that information.
And I just want to say, I understand, I think the intentions here are entirely good.
Of course.
I just think we sort of need to be careful that, that this group doesn't become a sort of catch-all for Black issues, such that issues impacting African Americans, people of color, therefore, sort of don't get raised in other committees, in the Recreation Committee, in the Community Board on Police, in other committees, I think. So I think we'll have to sort of think about what will the role of this be and how will it go about doing that. And I think the intention is great, and I think there probably is a role to be played. I just think we have to sort of flesh that out.
Certainly, fair enough. Great feedback, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Daffis. Okay, discussion item number 4, review approval of notice for the sale of liquor license. Mr. Desiderio.
At the last meeting, I was charged with putting together notice to bidders for the sale of the plenary retail consumption license. With the input of Mr. DeLuca and other members of the Township Committee, we put something together which was circulated to everybody with a minimum bid of $350, setting forth the various requirements that the license must be used within the Springfield Avenue Special Improvement District. We attached to it a list of all of the properties in the Special Improvement District. We provided the name of Nicole Wallace, the Executive Director of the Springfield Avenue Partnership, gave her phone number and her email address, etc. So this is ready to go with your approval to be published on or about February 20th and 27th, and a return date of March the 25th. So,
And we're also including the list of Springfield Avenue property, yeah.
yes, absolutely. So,
I would move it.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mayor McGee?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Fitzum.
Did you have more, Mr. Desiderio?
Thank you, Mr.
We
Desiderio.
want to move these things. right?
no, listen,
Action.
We're catching up for those 15.
when you're ahead, stop it.
I'm with you. Don't talk yourself out of yes.
All right, New Jersey Library Bond Grant, Mr. DeLuca.
Yes, so this is very exciting. The state has issued the grant application guidelines for the New Jersey Library Construction Bond Act. $87.5 million is going to be made available in the first round. The total bond is $125 million, so a good portion is coming up. The first round, the deadline for applications is April 6, 2020. We've been talking about this for a few years now. We are ready to move forward and get our application in on the April 6th deadline. I did send out a memo that talked about the grant application, so you see the progress here. We think that by the fourth quarter of hopefully September, we'll have a grant, not only a grant acknowledgement, but a grant contract so that we can start work with our architects. It's likely that in the fourth quarter of 2020, we will award a contract, or at least be ready to award a contract in early 2021 to a contractor. We will be asking for, our proposal is to ask for the maximum that we will be eligible for, which would be about $8 million, a little over $8 million. We will need to spend some money to get the application together. It requires some engineering and architect work. That work would have to be done anyway. It has to do with Department of Environmental Protection, it has to do with the soundness of the building and things like that. So the project right now is roughly $20 million. We're trying to bring that down some. We're going to be working with our architects and engineers to see where we can chop off a little bit here and there. One of the things that we need to include in the application is a certificate of match, and the library will be the entity that does apply. It needs a certificate of match. We will have a certificate from the Foundation Library, which, as we heard Saturday during the budget hearing, they've already have $1 million in commitments. And then we need a certification of match from the township. We have talked in the past about a $10 million commitment. We were hoping that $10 million would be matched by the state, but the state did make a change in their calculation by putting a cap on the square foot reimbursement. So we think that that $10, every dollar we spend, or every $100 we spend, we will be able to get $90 back in state and private money. So it's still a very good investment on our part. We're almost getting a one-for-one match. So I would ask my colleagues if it would be in order to have a resolution on the next agenda where we would commit ourselves still to the $10 million bond, which we would have to put together an ordinance in the fourth quarter. We have to do it 3 months after our grant notification. So that's what I'm asking. If we can do that, then I would work with Mr. Desiderio to get a resolution that we would adopt.
I have a question, Mr. Mayor, and Mr. DeLuca is probably in the best position to answer it. In terms of a match from the township, would the township be matching the money from the state and the money raised privately, or just one or the other?
So you match the state money.
Okay. So, I'm just going to throw numbers out there. Let's say that for ease of math, let's say we needed $20 million. The state gives 5, the township would match 5. We'd have to find the other 10 million.
So I think what we would ask, and I think that's a very good question. If the state gave 5, we had a certificate to do 10, I think we would have to go back to the library and really change the footprint of the plan, because I don't think we would be committing to $15 or $14 million. I think 10 is the most. So let's say the state gave 5, we would have to come back and have that conversation whether we wanted to stay at 10, whether we wanted to reduce it. We're hoping that the state will give the maximum amount. And it's based on square footage, it's 33,000 square feet. When you do that calculation, it comes out to $8.25 million.
Okay, so in a situation where the state gave us 8.25, we paid 8.25, that's 16.5, and then we would try to sort of privately raise.
We have $1 million already.
Right. No, so I'm saying, so that's $1 million, but so to the extent we could privately raise whatever amount to get to something closer to 20 million, that would decrease the amount that the township was taking in. I mean, every dollar that we go out and raise, the township is only obligated to put in
the match.
The match of the state. So if some anonymous donor stepped in and were to say, I'll give 10 million and the state gives us 5, and Maplewood has to put up the 5.
Right.
But I just want to understand.
And that is why if we can commit to 10 and we can find some other way of coming up with that money, we can reduce that 10 when we get to a bond ordinance.
Okay.
To some other number. But the other reality is that if the state does give us 8 and we have 10, we need to be sure about that at the time, because we have to go out to bid in the fourth quarter. So it's going to be, we're going to have some work this year to try to raise some other private money. The Library Foundation is working very hard to raise more than $1 million. That was their first threshold.
Right. So speaking only for myself, I'm comfortable at the 10 level.
Yeah.
I would need, if we're going to go above that, I would want to sort of have that discussion later if need be. For now, I'm comfortable going to 10. That's always been sort of my understanding of where the town was going to go, and I'm still on board for that. And I think we've discussed those reasons over the years, so I won't repeat them here tonight. But so I'm good on the 10, and I would if the mayor was if Mr. DeLuca was making a nomination, I would second that.
Yeah, I would make a motion that. Well, I think the motion would be at the next meeting, but if we have agreement, I'll work with Mr. Desiderio on the resolution. May I just say that in all my conversations with the Library Foundation, with the Library Board, I never went beyond 10, because I think 10 is the right number. If we can do less, that's even a better number. But I don't think that we should be beyond 10.
Agreed.
Right. In all of our conversations, it's been around 10. As a former foundation member, trustee, I mean, that was always the number, and I'm comfortable with that as well.
Okay, so we'll have something on the next agenda. That would be perfect.
Absolutely. And thank you, Mr. DeLuca, and to the Library Board and the Library Foundation, which I'm also a former member of.
Yes.
Just on the library relocation, I just put in some cleanup language.
Yep.
We are not going to be moving in there before the November 2020 election. That's a very important time. And but we will be, you'll see, we'll be probably starting to move stuff out of the main library in that fourth quarter and starting to put it in storage, starting to put some of it over at DeHart and other places that we might but I would expect either December or January, we would move into OEM.
And just for clarification, or for the public's knowledge, is that at our budget meeting this past Saturday, we had a lengthy discussion when the library was presenting their budget for 2020 about the plan for the new library and this particular subject, what would happen to, from inventory perspective. And so some questions were raised about where we would put books and other physical things, and OEM building was mentioned, and we talked about the huge election coming up in 2020, and so Mr. DeLuca was clarifying that, and thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Okay, and thank you. All right, we'll now move on to discussion item number 12. We have a resolution. Ms. Fritzen?
Mayor, it's resolution number 32-20, authorization for change order number 9 for Maplewood Avenue pavers, and that's Diamond Construction.
Thank you. Can we get a motion?
Mayor, this is on for resolution because whenever and for discussion by you and acknowledgement by you, whenever a change order on a project exceeds 20%, then it is necessary for a procedure to be followed, which includes, in this instance, the engineer providing you with a detailed analysis as to why we've gone over the 20% and how that occurred. You have that memo, which is dated today and which is attached. It's actually a certification which is required by the regulations. So what the resolution is doing is stating specifically what the overages were, which in this instance was 30.78% of the original value. It's interesting to note that in this particular instance there was no other bidder for this project. The engineer lays out all the various reasons for this to occur. So this particular resolution, 3220, authorizes change order number 9 in the amount of $107,494.80. As is stated in the course of the resolution, this resolution has to be retained in the office of the township clerk, as it always is, with a copy of the memo, and it also has to be published in the local newspapers after its passage, and a copy has to be sent to the Director of Local Government Services. So with that said, I present it to you for your consideration.
I move the resolution 32-20.
I second.
Any discussion? Ms. Fritzen, please call the roll.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mayor McGehee?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Fritzen. We have another resolution.
Yes, item 12, Mayor, it's resolution number 34-20, resolution closing Maplewood Avenue paver replacement contract. Once again, Diamond Construction.
I move resolution 34-20.
I second it.
And in this instance, this is just now closing the project out because you've now authorized all the effective change orders, and this now is an acceptance by the engineer that he has received all the necessary paperwork, all of the bonds that need to be placed, etc., and closing the project.
Thank you, Mr. Desiderio. Any additional discussion? Okay, please call the roll.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mayor McGehee?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Fritzen. We are now item 14, consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question about one of the items on the consent agenda, resolution number 2320, so I don't know whether you want to address that first or whether you want a motion on the other items, and we can do that separately.
Why don't we get a motion on every item but 2, and then I'll take that one.
Okay, so Mr. Mayor, I move adoption of items 1 and 3 through 12 on the consent agenda.
I second.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mayor McGehee?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Fritzen. So discussion on resolution number 2320. What this is in regard is that we had a conversation about this beginning of January. What I'm looking to do is just change some of the flow of our meeting itself. So basically what I'm doing is I'm moving up the administrative reports from elected officials, and reports from departments further up into the agenda.
And that's what it wasn't clear to me in looking at the resolution number 2320 that was in our packet. I guess it wasn't clear to me where those things were going to fall because I didn't see them
Let me pull it.
spelled out.
Yeah, no, it's in there.
It's right in there. Quick.
Yeah, it's, you have, okay, so,
I have it in front of me, and maybe,
okay, so we have introduction of new ordinances.
yep,
Okay, then we have reports from department heads. Mm-hmm. Okay, then we have administrative reports.
I think there may be an issue with the PDF here. I'm looking at the one we received today. Maybe I'll go back to an earlier one.
I didn't send any today, but let me...
No, the clerk's office sent one
The
today.
one we received today is not complete.
Okay, then that's the problem then.
Yes, it's the previous one.
Okay, can I see it then?
So here, and then these are the changes.
Okay, this is what my copy didn't have.
And Ms. Niven, what we're doing, we're moving up.
Yep,
in the
okay.
meeting. And the rationale behind it is that, we tend to have more people come at the beginning of the meeting, and I think the work that all of us are doing, I think, we should talk about that at the front of the meeting, as well as the work that Mr. Veros, Mr. Desiderio, Ms. Fritzen are doing as well.
And Mary, I agree. My issue wasn't any sort of disagreement on that. It was that in looking at the version that was sent around today, there was a page missing. So it actually looked like we were stopping in the middle of the meeting, and then, so none of those things were on there. So, and one thing I would say in support of this is, and it's something that has occasionally stuck in my craw over the years, but it hasn't stuck there long enough for me to do anything about it, is there have been times where substantive items have come up during the administrative reports towards the end of the meeting where Ms. Riveros or her predecessor or Ms. Fritzen or Mr. Desiderio has brought up an issue, sometimes where we've taken action or considered action in response to their comments, but that report happened after the second public comment. So to the extent there were people here who might have wanted to address that and give us their thoughts on that, they didn't have a chance to do that for at least 2 more weeks in a formal way. So in addition to the reasons that you gave before and tonight, I will also support this resolution because it takes care of that issue of sort of, because it was obviously never done on purpose, but I got the sense that, it could be seen as stifling public comment, to put certain items that sometimes were quite substantive after the second public comment, and then there was no opportunity for people to be heard. So yeah, having now seen the corrected version that Mr. Desiderio showed me, I will move Resolution 2320.
Second.
Perfect. Any more discussion? Okay, great. Ms. Fritzen, please call the roll.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mayor McGee?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Fritzen. Okay, we're now moving on to just, our second public comment. Anyone who would like to talk about any subject matter, please approach. Just state your name and your address, please.
Brandon Edling, 19 William Street, here in Maplewood. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the Township Committee.
Good evening.
As I said before, my name is Brandon Edling. I've been here in Maplewood since 2013. My wife and 2 boys and I have always lived off William Street. As you probably know, William Street is right off of Boyden Avenue, a heavily traveled and unfortunately heavily damaged road. I know over the past few months there have been repairs to the sidewalks and curbs, and which is fantastic. My boys, 8 and 9, can now ride their bikes down the sidewalks, so there's progress. The road itself still has dozens and dozens of potholes, and most of the line stripes are gone as well. It makes for a dangerous situation. My wife is always concerned when she's driving down that road. So I was hoping that perhaps one or more of you could share future plans for the repairs of Boyden Avenue.
Sure. Thank you for your comments, Mr. Edling. We recognize that our intention was to pave that road in 2019, and from a timeline perspective, we got behind and we didn't get to it. We are cognizant of that. We talked about it at our standing committee, Engineering, Planning, and Public Works. Our plan is as soon as the weather is at a normalized temperature for 5 consistent days, that we're going to get out there. Our engineer, Mr. Kittner, has been tasked with this as a priority one. He knows to reach out to the contractor who's already been, appointed to the job, to give that contractor 10-day notice they can come out. We are planning to do some patchwork, obviously, to address, because winter is here, to address in the interim. And frankly, we do apologize, but we will get to that. And that is our intention, that's our plan.
Great. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Would anyone else like to address the Township Committee?
I see in the audience, Mayor, that we have our county representative here. I wonder if she's interested in coming up and saying hello. We haven't seen you in the new year. That's right. We're happy to have you with us.
Happy New Year. Congratulations, Mayor McGehee. I'm Keisha Burnett.
Yes.
From Essex County. I'm your liaison. I'm also the acting division head for the Division of Family Assistance and Benefits, formerly known as Welfare. I am also the moorkeeper for Essex County. I would like to, since you wanted me to say something, cordially invite anyone tomorrow at 2 o'clock at the Hall of Records for an announcement regarding Dr. Martin Luther King and a new project that Essex County Joe DiVincenzo is going to announce tomorrow.
Ooh, exciting. Do we
So that's
have,
at 2 o'clock.
Any questions for Ms. Burnett?
yeah, any issues and concerns we want to bring up? Now's the time. Anyone?
Thank you for your time, and we'll try to see you tomorrow at 2 o'clock.
All right.
Would anyone else like to address the Township Committee? Seeing no one, we will close our second public comment. Agenda item number 16, reports from departments. Did we receive any reports? I don't remember seeing any reports. No. Okay, I was confirming that. Okay, agenda item number 17, we'll hear from department heads. Administrative reports.
Mayor, I just have one. Recently, we had our CFO pass the tax collector's exam, and we were looking to designate him as the Maplewood tax collector. I'd like to entertain or have you consider a motion to designate Mr. Kaloje as our township tax collector.
I move it. Second.
Actually, this is going to be a resolution which I'll memorialize.
Yes. Okay. Ms. Whitson,
Mr.
please call the roll.
Davis?
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca?
Yes.
Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Mayor McGehee?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Whitson.
And members of the committee, that is a resolution that will appoint him effective today.
Yes.
Yes.
Sounds good.
That was my motion.
I understood it. Even if you do cut me off.
Effective, yes.
That's all I have.
Thank you, Mrs. Earls. Mr. Desiderio.
At the sake of being cut off, I have one thing.
Yes.
I circulated to you and I discussed with you, I think at the last meeting, a vaping ordinance, anti-vaping ordinance that South Orange passed. And I sent it to you, and I don't know what, if anything, the governing body wants to do. You want to think about it? You want to discuss it at the next meeting? You want me to draft it? What's your pleasure?
Let's make it a discussion item at the next meeting.
May I suggest, the next meeting, we're going to have the Board of Health. Oh, yeah. And can we share it with our Health Division?
And I have not circulated to her, so I'll...
So maybe we can let her put it on for the Health, and then she can give us her comments.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Okay, will do. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Desiderio. Ms. Fritzen.
Thanks, Mayor. I just want to report that the clerk's office continues with the 220 combo permits, jitneys, parking permits, monthly overnight lots, renewals for 2020 in effect, and the grace period is very quickly coming to an end. So I think we have certainly had a lot of availability. We go into the third week in January to honor the 2019 permits, and we had several late nights, including a Friday night. So if you are watching from the public and you need to get your parking permit, please do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fritzen. Any questions for Ms. Fritzen or Mr. Desiderio or Ms. Viveros?
I have a question for Ms. Viveros. I wonder if there's any update on the Wi-Fi pilot. I know where we left our discussion last, we were ready to go technology-wise, and we were awaiting an approval from Maplewood Crossing as a possible location where an additional pole for coverage would go. Is there any update in that regard? Mr.
I think the assistant administrator has somewhat of an update.
Welcome.
And from what I recollect, there was a meeting that Maplewood Crossing was going to have with the vendor to talk about the specifications. I don't know if that meeting took place yet.
That was today.
There you go.
Well, my timing is perfect.
Yeah, so there's been ongoing conversations between the vendor, Data Network Solutions, and Maplewood Crossing. They had a meeting today to do a site survey, scope of work, and see how the antenna was going to be installed. There was no indication if that meant yes, no, or maybe, but they were out there. The hatch on the roof is frozen, so they can't get out right now. But they are working with Benita at Maplewood Crossing to get something in writing to get over to Tom Powers so we can get an agreement to have access to the roof. I will have an update as soon as I see what they put in writing. I spoke with Paul Roth the week earlier. I got him over a scope of work and a narrative from the vendor for the Seth Boyden portion. He was going to present that to his facilities committee last Thursday, and then the hope was to get it to the Board of Ed for the 27th so that we can get a formal agreement for right of access for the Seth Boyden portion. I think the only two remaining questions were an internal discussion we have to have about the purchasing part of it, and there was like a network security measure so that we could troubleshoot our network remotely that needs to be taken care of internally with Paul before they move forward. But then, other than that, that's pretty much it.
Well, part of the issue too, currently the company that they use was the DNS, the vendor that they use for the service, they're up for bid. So it's not necessarily a promise that they're going to be working with this network administrator. So he had some concerns about the purchasing power and going forward with the add-ons to the service and how we would procure that.
So wait a minute, DNS is a state contractor, yes?
Yes, but they,
So they're up for renewal?
yes.
Okay. And it's possible they won't be using them for the server?
You know, time from time, you know, usually they're pretty consistent.
They've been a vendor for the school for over 10 years.
Right, so I think he's just alerting us to that, so,
And what is the timing on that, do we know?
I believe he said June or July.
yeah.
Yeah,
It would be like midway through getting this up and running, so,
As long as we award
award it
before,
beforehand.
as long as we award while they're still a valid contractor, we're fine.
Okay.
I mean, my understanding, we interviewed the subcontractor, the police, Chief Glenn was there, we were all pleased with that. The linchpin to me is Maplewood Crossing. Once we get them online, then I think we're all set to get the paperwork done and go. So
Great.
that's where I would go, and once we get that together, I think we'll be in pretty good shape.
Terrific. Thank you all for your continued efforts in this. Thank you.
Any additional questions for our administrative team? Nope. Okay, great. We'll now have reports from elected officials. Ms. Fritz. Oh, Ms. Fritz, you have anything else?
No, I went.
Oh, yes, she did, yeah. Oh, she did?
Yes, she did. Yeah.
Was I here?
Yes, you were.
She was really here.
That's good, yes.
Paying attention.
Oh, she didn't talk about me.
She was
It was
looking to bring your
clearly not memorable to you.
Oh, yeah, I get you. You did. You talked about the parking thing. Yeah, it's all coming back to me.
The combo.
Oh, man.
You
Get your
want to
combo.
come up with something else.
Yeah, combo.
Get your combo now.
I had a hamburger and french fries. Oh, my God. Okay, reports from elected officials. Mr. Daffis.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a couple quick updates from my various subcommittees. The Youth Advisory Committee, and we have one of our chairs present, Elizabeth Crofton. Hi there, Elizabeth. Nice seeing you down there. We are moving forward with the MAPSO Safe Rides ride-sharing program. We continue to move along in this regard. Eventually, we're going to get this program up and running. We are in the process of scheduling a general assembly at the high school so that we can get as many students before us to explain how the program works and to begin the driver registration process. So that is forthcoming. We hope to have a GA before spring break, and I will certainly report on that as soon as we have a date. Excuse me. In Code Committee, we continue to, increase our property maintenance inspections and violations when there are violations. Our team is doing a phenomenal job, considering the few people that we have, in keeping up with all of our properties in town, residential and commercial. And we are moving forward with the alternative housing model known as accessory dwelling units. We continue to review that and to see what would make sense for our community and how to phase that in, and I will have more details on that as soon as we get to a closer final product. The Maplewood Community Board on Police, as I reported last time, reporting again, will be showcasing its year-long efforts in looking at policing in our community. Come on by on February 9th. It's a Sunday between 2 and 4 p.m. at the Bergdorf. It's free, it's open to all, and we want to see everyone from the community tell us about their experiences and learn about the important work of the committee. And I will allow Mr. DeLuca to report on the fabulous, inspirational, and moving MLK Day celebration that the Community Coalition put forth yesterday. That's my report.
Thank you, Mr. Daffis. Mr. DeLuca.
So I have 6 items. The first is there was a fabulous and inspirational Martin Luther King event at Columbia High School yesterday, sponsored by the Community Coalition on Race. Our mayor was the master of ceremonies, did a great job. We had our congressman there, which is very important, but more important is we had our young people profiled there. They were performing and speaking, and it was very moving. And it was a very, very good program. And then we had a volunteer fair where there was a lot of energy, and people took signs about Soma standing up to intolerance and against hate. So it was a very good day in Maplewood and South Orange. NAPSA, but Soma too. In line with that, I wanted to mention that last Thursday, I had the opportunity to go to the South Orange Middle School for a program, and I want to compliment the school district. They had all the 5th graders throughout the whole district read one book. That's awesome. And they came and they called us to ask if we could help with transporting some students. So we made 2 jitneys available to take students from Tuscan up to Psalms. And it was called Turning 15 on the Road to Freedom. It was the book was written by Linda Lowry in telling her story of the 1965 Selma Voting Rights March, and it was really terrific. She spoke, and then she was interviewed by a panel of about a dozen students. It was really, really good. So I want to thank the school district, and I think this may have been the first time that they did an all-school book read. Wow. So we're going to we've talked to them a little bit about the future, what they might be selecting. So I want to update you on our train tunnel art. As you know, the Maplewood Arts Council was charged with doing the art in the 2 tunnels. Last year we got the murals up in the north tunnel. In the south tunnel we were looking to do something a little different. We've been kicking around the idea of a lighting display. When the Village Visioning program came out, and they also talked about some lights. So we had a meeting, the Arts Council, we had with the Village Alliance, we did a site visit of there. We're really thinking of some very neat lighting that would go in there. We're going to be raising some money, going out to bid to get a designer. And we've talked about how to connect the park with the village and to run that maybe down to the library. So it's all being thought about. and we'll be preparing a scope of service and trying to raise some money to make this happen. So
That's great.
it's really exciting. We looked at some lighting they did in Lynn, Massachusetts, underpasses, and also Birmingham, Alabama, with some tunnels and things like that. So, in fact, we found a tunnel that looked just like that tunnel. Oh, cool. So it was pretty cool. 4th of July, we're looking to do something different this year. We're looking for the town to be the sponsor. In the past, we've had the 4th of July Committee of the Maplewood Civic Association be the sponsor. We work very closely with them. We've been working with them over the years to fine-tune it. We think this year we will be doing it. It will be slightly different. We'll still have the parade in the morning. We'll have the youth activities. There won't be an all-day-long period. There'll be fireworks at night. There won't be a charge. It'll be for free. We'll have to talk about this, what the budget implications are. Maybe we could do that Saturday.
Sure.
But we'll also be looking to raise some private funds.
Right.
And sponsorship. So we think we'll be able to do that. We'll be reaching out to our local groups like the Rotary and some of the others, the Y, to help us run those programs. We'll be doing, as we do in the past, have done in the past, we'll be doing the parade from Rickleton down to the park, the bike parade. So there'll be some of it that'll be the same, some of it will be different, but there will be no charge for the fireworks this year. And what I'd like to do is to get a motion, I'd like to make a motion to have the town sponsor the fireworks this year.
Second.
So moved.
Actually, I'm sorry, sponsor the 4th of July activities this year.
Yes.
So you're still seconding it?
Okay.
Yeah.
Ms. Fritson, please call the roll.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Absolutely, yes.
Mayor McGee?
Yes, and I just wanted the public to know, we've listened to them, and now we're saying it's going to be free. So we're taking down fences and taking down walls.
No fences.
No, let's not say no fences, there'll still be security.
Security fences,
There will be
yeah.
fences for bike
Fences for getting into Northfield or Southfield, we're eliminating that, so progress.
My 5th item is the Maplewood Library is open and willing, and we talked about the library board meeting to sponsor this year's Welcome to Maplewood. If we want them to do that, it would be on a Tuesday night. That's the night that they're closed. We're thinking about having it upstairs. I know you talked about it in communication. You should just let us know if you want to do something different. The library is ready to do that. We're looking to do that after the April 6th proposal deadline. So it'll be sometime in April or May. Typically what we do is we send out invitations to all of our new residents. We get that through the tax office. And we'll be doing the same thing again unless there's some other proposal.
Right. We'll definitely discuss it. I think knowing that 2 committees are thinking about it is a good thing, not a bad thing, so we'll talk about it more.
All right. And lastly, we have show and tell. I want to, can you see that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
We have our Black History website. It's maplewoodbhm.com. If you hit that, you'll get that, and you'll see there's a slew of events coming up.
Really exciting. Very exciting.
Our plan is to, this is live now, it is on the website. We're still fine tuning it, but we wanted to start getting it out there. Our plan is on Monday and Tuesday, we're going to do some blast emails on it.
Great.
We'll be doing a print poster. It'll be a little different than last year, but it'll have a lot of the activities up. We'll be doing a press release. We'll be doing targeted Facebook posts. Typically, campaign type style, but as you can see, it's a whole month of activities, including 2 readings by our mayor of various books, and
Start reading that.
we have art and the music. We're going to have a film in this building right here in this room. We're going to have a film. We'll be using the Bergdorf. We'll be using 1978, DeHart Center, the Woodland, the Senior Building. Some of the businesses will be doing things. The Village Alliance is going to be doing things. The Springfield Avenue Partnership. The Chamber of Commerce again is providing money to do the publicity. So this is an all-town on board.
It's great. It's beautiful.
And I am done, sir.
Thank you, Mr. DeLuca. Very exciting Black History Month. It's looking forward to everybody coming out and really embracing and enjoying all the culture and history as families to learn more and celebrate. Mr. Limbrick, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I actually just returned from vacation, but I was very pleased to hear that during my absence, there was a very well-attended and spirited Recreation Advisory Committee meeting. Mr. Daffis mentioned it tonight, that many youth and some of their parents came out, and and I think that really shows that is the type of thing that can be a good precedent for other residents going forward of all ages, of all backgrounds. If there's something in town that you'd like to see happen, or that you would like more of or less of, as the case might be, obviously you can come here to Town Hall, come up to the podium during one of our public comment sessions, but also, reaching out to whether it be the elected officials, whether it be department heads here in Town Hall, or finding out what might be the Citizen Advisory Committee or the Advisory Board that handles that issue, and going there. And I think that, just based on the feedback of the Recreation Director and the Recreation Advisory Committee members, who are residents who've been appointed by the Township Committee, all really positive. And I think, everyone's really excited that to have that kind of public engagement. So I would just encourage anyone out there who might be listening, if you're engaged enough to be watching us at 9 o'clock on a Tuesday night, and there's something that you'd like to bring up, there's plenty of opportunities, and your input is not only permitted, it's welcome. And Mr. Mayor, I haven't really been around, so that's really all I have to report on. But I look forward to our next budget hearing this Saturday, and I have nothing further to report.
Thank you, Mr. Limbrick. Okay, a couple of things. One, we have 7 standing committees, and several of them have met since we had our first meeting on the 7th. I'll report on communications. We covered a handful of topics, including we are now exploring a GPS-centric app program to leverage for our jitney buses. We've heard concerns from residents about, if the train is late and the jitney leaves the train station, then how, where is it at? How long am I going to wait? My commute's extended. So it's an app that's been used by, it's being currently used by New Jersey Transit. It's also on Google, and it's a way where you can kind of see where your jitney is on its respective route, so you can at least have an idea of, the amount of time it might take for it to get back to the station or where it is on its route. So we're going to just continue to do things where we're looking to do continuous improvement to help enhance the commute for our residents, especially those who are related to our jitneys. We've already talked, speaking of jitneys, we already talked about the advertising revenue. We discussed that at the communication meeting. We discussed that tonight as a discussion item. Our Maplewood campaign, advertising campaign is launched. We looked at it. We're going to make some adjustments in terms of some of the drone footage that's in there. I'd like to again thank DCH Audi for their sponsorship there. But we're looking to add some other footage in there too that will even enhance what Maplewood is in terms of some of the events we have all throughout town. Also, we have put together some print ads, and I don't know if we've seen these not, but there's some print ads that we've put out here at Maplewood before, and so we're going to keep having these come out. We're going to enhance them. We're going to put them in the jitneys. This is a way for people to get in touch with us proactively, to learn more about what's happening in town, updates and things of that nature. So if you see these things, please follow the directions and sign up. You can also scan it with the QR code as well. And then we also talked about 2020 goals and objectives for the Communications Committee. We see this as an opportunity to just enhance what we're currently doing. So we're going to make some tweaks or adjustments to our website. We're also going to look at some of the URLs that are out there and try to do some more management of that. And also we're going to enhance some of our communications, especially from an email perspective, and put together an email communication campaign, which will include some of the tone that we use, and also will accompany our Maple Leaf quarterly magazine. And finally, we did also talk about the Welcome to Maplewood event, but we'll reconvene on that at the next meeting and decide how we're going to manage that. The planning board met on January 14th, and there were a couple of applications that were discussed. Both of them were tabled. Just for the public certification is that there's an opportunity to do a mixed-use development by pickets across from DCH Audi. That would be some type of commercial on the first floor, residential on the second floor. And then also there is a proposal to do a 40-unit property basically on the corner of Wellesley and Springfield and extend that way east. We are looking at that and the proposal, and that's still ongoing, but those are the things that were discussed at the planning board this month in January. I just wanted to take a minute also to thank everyone who was involved in the MLK weekend. I thought it was wonderful. As has been mentioned, the CCR did a phenomenal job yesterday at Columbia High School. It was the event was amazing. There was high attendance. I think over 800 people were there.
Yes.
It was incredible. I also want to recognize Maplewood Middle School. On Friday, they had their Dr. King Peace March through the village. It was beautiful. It always is. Special acknowledgement to Mr. Palmgren, who has been running that now for 20 years. So this was the 20th anniversary of that particular event. On the 29th, next Wednesday, at 7 p.m., our very own Governor Phil will be here for Town Hall. He has decided to kick off the year in Maplewood. So there is going to be seating for the public, but it will be limited. It starts at 7. I would advise getting there a little early, but not too early. So more details than that. I know we put some social media posts out there, but that's very exciting for our town, and I think it just speaks volumes about what the governor's office thinks about the township of Maplewood. And then finally, I just want to mention that in the engineering, public works, and planning meeting, we listened to issues. So, for example, we had a resident talk today about what happened, his concerns about paving on Boyden Park. Boyden Avenue. We're looking at that. We're also looking at other areas in town to enhance our construction for 2020, our projects and plans, and also recycling. We know that we've had some challenges there, and under Mr. Vero's leadership, we're looking at alternate ways for recycling pickup, which could be additional days, different days of the week, any way where we can kind of enhance the quality of our recycling pickup times. And also with our electronics, we are cognizant we only have 2 days a year. We're looking to do that multiple days a week, and so more to come on that. We'll send a communication out on that as well. And with that, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
Okay. I was going to say, do you want to say a couple words about the census?
Oh, I missed my, thank you.
Yeah, because we attended that meeting the other day. Just very quickly.
He's reading my notes. I left it right there. Thank you. Yeah, so we did have a census meeting last Thursday, and we are moving forward with some activities to promote the census. Just for everyone's edification, communication will go out to the public on March 12th. But before that, for those who attended the CCR event and MLK, we'll have a presence at all activities in town. It's really imperative that residents understand how important the census is. For us, it really just determines several things, including what type of federal funding we get, what type of funding we get at the state level, and also where we end up when they decide to redistrict from a national perspective. So with that, I will now entertain a motion to adjourn. So moved. Second. All in favor? Aye. Good night. Thank you, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
I forgot I had it.